Great. So before we begin, I'd like you to picture a dinner table, right? A big dinner table, 6 people, lots of food, and everyone talking together at the same time. And imagine that conversation happening in Hindi, Punjabi, English, Haryanvi, and even Manipuri. And interestingly, everyone understands everyone. No subtitles, no translators, and definitely no AI. Well, welcome to my family. I am Reena Beri. I'm a founder and educator dedicated to helping people build leadership, confidence, and well-being. Now, so you heard about my family, right? So interestingly, growing up in this family did something very interesting or exciting. It made me an expert in reading people, not in psychological sense, but in a sense that very early on in my life, I could interpret that same emotion can perhaps be expressed in many different ways. To give you an example, in one family, love was loud, and in another, love was quiet. And in another, if someone asked you for the 5th time whether you had eaten or not, it wasn't a question. It was a full-blown declaration of love for you. And the answer to that question can never be a no. It has to be a yes, right? So growing up in these many cultures and then, later becoming a part of yet another one, because my mother is Manipuri, my father is Punjabi, and I'm married into a Jat family. So think about the kind of exposure that I got, right? All of this put together did something, again, exciting thing for me, that I learned very early on, yet again, that the very important part of communication had very little to do with language. And it has everything to do with the meaning that we create together. Now, how powerful is that? So I'm going to pause for a second, and I want everyone sitting here to think about it for a second. Think about, when you were growing up, what was that one sentence or that word you kept hearing repeatedly, and you still remember them today? So much so, it has shaped you into who you are. I'll give you a few examples. For example, my brother, he grew up hearing, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Right? I'm sure it's a very common statement in every household. And then we only grow up, and we go to our workplaces only to hear a different version of the same thing, which is, "You're not ready for the role yet. You need to work on your leadership skills. You don't have it in you to be a great leader." Or perhaps, you've got what it takes, right? And yet, and that's what I want to talk about, and yet it is so fascinating that a lot of us sitting here, we forget our passwords. We forget where we parked our cars in a crowded shopping malls. And then there are these brave souls who even dare to forget their life-changing events, which is their spouse's birthdays or anniversaries, right? And somehow we don't forget a single sentence that someone said to us 20 years ago. And that has left an impression of a lifetime, right? And that's the thing about words. Words don't just affect our emotions. Words shape beliefs. And beliefs shape actions. So what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that they shape actions? The thing about words is that you repeat them often enough, they end up becoming the voices in your heads. I'll give you an example. So a colleague of mine from my time as an AVP at a large corporate, really capable, talented, the sweetest person of the team, someone that everybody loved, everybody admired, and they wanted to be protective of that person. So much so that people started calling her the sweetest person, she's the baby of the team, or she's the sweetheart of the team. But guess what happened? That every time a role came up for promotion, unfortunately, she didn't make it. Not because she was incapable, but because her label decided her destiny. And this is what I tell everyone. Be careful about the kind of shoes you use when you describe someone. because you have no idea that your words perhaps have more power than you think, and it has the potential to change someone's life. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm actually fascinated by this ancient biblical proverb that life and death are in the power of the tongue. How powerful is that? Not because words are magical, but because words have consequences. And just like the example I shared with you, the words that were chosen to describe her actually decided the destiny for her. And for a lot of people, perhaps climbing a mountain or running a marathon is far less intimidating than speaking in public, because it continues to be one of the greatest fears that people are dealing with today. Right? So we've established words are important. What we say matters. When what we say to others has the power to change their lives and how they view themselves. But here comes another question, a question that is often overlooked. What about the words that never see the day of light? Think about it. How about the words that died a natural death inside our minds and in our hearts? What about those words? And in fact, Google conducted this study where they studied about 160 or 180 odd teams to understand why some teams were successful whilst the others struggled. And the findings were so interesting. The findings were that people wanted psychological safety. Simply put, people performed best or people performed better when they felt safe enough to speak up. And this is where I want each one of you sitting in this room to think about all those moments where you wanted to say something, but you didn't. Where you had great ideas that could have perhaps changed the course of history, but you chose not to. It's rather unfortunate that we see this every day in meeting rooms, in training halls, and sadly, even around dinner tables. Think about how many times you put your dreams aside because you doubted your own voice. Think about the number of times a child, a colleague, a family member, or someone you knew held back on their idea, which could have potentially changed everything around you for good. The question is, why? What is it that we have done that we forgot to create a safe space for people to speak up? So when I say that, people are uncomfortable sharing their opinions and views around their dinner tables, it's a question that we need to think about. If we don't control the world outside, we perhaps control the world which is there inside the four walls. And if we as people, we are creating a society where our children, our family members, our colleagues are not comfortable enough to speak up, then perhaps it's time that we need to stop, rethink, and really take actions that can change the course of this entire thing. This actually reminds me of one of my colleagues, not colleagues actually, one of my trainees from one of my batches. And I always remember him because he taught me something that perhaps no book would have. Really bright, sharp, disciplined. Typically one of those who know all the answers, but he rarely spoke. Upon inquiring, he said, "Ma'am, it's not that I don't know the answers. I know the answers, I just don't want to say them wrong in English." Now mind you, he said, "I don't want to say them wrong in English." And that day, he left me thinking. He left the room, I sat down, and I knew I had to do something about it the next day. So I didn't change the lesson plan. I changed the environment. Next day when he walked in, there were less interruptions, there were less corrections, and more listening, and more acknowledgement. Outcome? Outcome that when the fear of judgment left the room, confidence found its voice. Most of us are not afraid of speaking. We are afraid of being judged. We are afraid of being wrong. We are afraid of looking foolish. But that's not the real tragedy. The real tragedy is that the world never gets to hear the great ideas, the great things that perhaps we can achieve. That is the real tragedy. So, so now before I conclude my talk, there are a few things that I'd like to say. If there is anything, that you want to take back with you from this talk, let it be these very simple 5 ideas. I call them simple, yet they are so powerful that they have the potential to change countless lives around you. Number 1, choose curiosity over correction. Try saying, "Tell me more," instead of "You are wrong." You'll be surprised how curiosity opens people up. Number 2, fluency over intelligence, or intelligence over fluency, right? Understand that English is just another language. And just like reading, writing, sketching, you can learn this language. It is not a measure of someone's potential. It's not a measure of someone's knowledge. And for many of us who are speaking in English today, it's not even their first language. It's their second, third, or perhaps the 4th language. And in my opinion, that does not deserve judgment. If anything, it deserves immense amount of respect. Number 3, in a world that we live in, it is so essential that we understand that when we are listening to someone, we should listen for meaning, not for perfection. Because people are not afraid of speaking. They are afraid of being judged when they do. And years from now, perhaps people won't even remember what we said, but they will remember how our words made them feel. So before I conclude my final thought, that somewhere in the audience of your life today, someone is listening. A child, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, and perhaps the person that you listen to the most, your own self. And the next sentence that you say could either build a wall or a doorway. It could either be a limitation or a possibility. So choose your words carefully. Because in a world that is obsessed with speaking perfectly, perhaps the true meaning of communication skills is making another human feel that you are heard and your voice matters. Thank you so much.